Hello again, Craig here at a gun show after it's closed. I have a special guest here. We wanted to try to get more people here, different vendors and show promoters to show what's going on that the general public generally won't know about anything relating to guns. There's a lot of discrimination by private companies when it comes to anything dealing with guns. I know sometimes, as most of you know, I live on the road and I do like Wi-Fi, public Wi-Fi. And one time I was trying to do a radio show from a KFC parking lot, we'll go ahead and say the name. And on the Wi-Fi, I couldn't get all the websites dealing with guns, and I was trying to look up a holster site, and I couldn't even get on. They were blocked in public Wi-Fi. And so this is happening by private companies that are basically discriminating against anything relating to guns. But we're going to be talking about insurance companies, we're going to be talking about media outlets, we're going to be talking about credit card companies, and you're going to be shocked to find that we have a lot of discrimination from private companies, not governments, anything dealing with guns or gun shows. I have with me a special guest, Vic. He owns a business here in Michigan. We're at a closed gun show in Grand Rapids, Michigan right now. And Vic's going to talk about some of his experiences as well. I tried to get more people here, but a lot of people didn't want to appear on camera, so we'll have to do it this way. So, Vic, you want to introduce your business, what you do?
Sure, yeah. My name is Vic Reed. I'm owner of Midwest Ordnance out of Royal Oak, Michigan. And I've been in this business pretty much all my life. And yeah, I've seen a lot of changes and had a lot of experiences, good experiences, and in this case, like we're going to talk about, some not so good experiences.
Yeah, and I want to stick with things that the general public generally wouldn't know. And one of the things that started this was a promoter in Indiana was telling me, a gun show promoter, was telling me that he couldn't take a credit card payment for advance of the show. I had to send money in to do the show, but I had to send in a money order. They couldn't do a credit card. Well, why not? Because the credit card company won't let us do anything with this business.
Right.
So credit card companies, right off the bat, that's what got me started in this. Sometimes ATM machines mysteriously shut down at gun shows. I've also found where all of a sudden they don't work anymore, because if the credit card company if they are prejudiced against gun shows or gun related stuff, and they find out that, hey, that's a gun show, they might shut them down. It's pretty strange. Some vendors tell me problems with credit cards. Sometimes you can buy a little machine or swipe them. Square was one company I heard a lot of people were having problems with. I think you said you had Square also at one time, right?
Yes. I first started accepting credit cards. It was in the late 1980s, so it's been quite a while that I've accepted credit cards, and there's been quite an evolution, especially being on the road and being mobile. Things have come a long way. Now, in the instance of Square, they were really one of the first to push out there and revolutionize this, the little card reader, I guess it is, that actually would plug into your phone for the cellular reception. And yeah, they got a lot of people involved. There were actually sales reps that solicited through the gun shows, I can remember, trying to get vendors, gun show dealers, to
use them,
go
right?
over to, use their product to sign up and use them as a credit card processor. Well, I think that lasted, I want to say, maybe about a year. And all of a sudden, and I never changed because I'd been through a few different credit card processors, and I had no desire to want to change because I was doing really well with who I was with. They had discovered that a lot of people at the gun shows, these dealers, were using Square, and because of the company policy, they decided they didn't want to have
their policy
merchants that were accepting credit cards for processing through Square.
So their policy must have changed then at some point, right? First they're promoting
somebody caught wind at Square, probably some higher up exec as my,
or else they had a change of CEO or something. Something happened in the company that changed
they were alerted to it probably.
So at first they were
probably from some anti-gun organization, probably got a hold of Square and said, hey, do you know that your company is processing credit cards for all these gun dealers? So they put an end to it overnight.
There
were vendors that were left
some nasty letters boycotting or something, maybe some
I'm sure.
feedback that way.
I'm sure.
So to promote that and then to yank the rug out from under them. Okay, so some companies, and I got to point out that this is really fully legal. The companies can contract with whoever they want, right? I mean, it's not like they're doing anything illegal here. It may be a little wrong or immoral, but they can do that.
Right.
So because it's a private company and they're dealing with other private companies, so they can contract with whoever they want. I have heard some stories about other card companies too. Have you had any other major experiences with credit card companies?
Oh yeah, there was early on. I think the first company I was with, maybe, I don't know, 8 years, and then as mobile merchants, I should say, became more prevalent at shows where you could accept credit cards on the road, so to speak. Through the 90s, more and more processing companies, banks, were getting in on this. So they had, their sales reps going out to trade shows like gun shows and signing people up. And yeah, there was a couple different. American Bank Card Corporation was another big one. That rep came through some of the Michigan gun shows, signed up numerous dealers to accept credit cards. And same thing, I think it was less than a year, somebody made a corporate decision over an American Bank card, and that was it. They said no more gun-related merchants, and they terminated their accounts. And I had that directly happen to me on one occasion where this, I don't remember the bank, but he came through and he says, look, I want to come out to your store and meet with you, because I have a brick and mortar store as well. So he came out to my shop, met with me after the gun show, and he told me all this money he could save me on credit card processing rates. That was his ploy to get me to change over from the people I was using. And I did my first gun show that weekend after I signed up with the new processor, and here it comes Wednesday. Well, that money didn't show up in my bank. Now, this was the mid-90s. It was before I had internet access to check my bank account. So I had to physically go to the bank and get my balance, and I'm like, wow, where's my money? I had that time, I don't know, $5,000 or $6,000 worth of credit card charges I was waiting for to come through.
They didn't show up yet.
And it didn't show up, and I called them, and I'm like, what's going on? Where's my money? And, well, more or less, I wasn't that straightforward. I said, look, I'm waiting for my money, and I ran these charges over the weekend. And they're like, oh, well, these are all, and see, at that time, we used to have to make we had to go to the pay phone or use a cell phone, whatever was available, to run these charges. So we had to physically call them in and then later come back and do a force on the machine. That's the way we used to have to do it before today's day and age. So anyway, they're like, oh, well, these are all force entries. And I said, yeah. I said, well, I was at a trade show, and I didn't have a machine set up there, so, we had to call in and get voice authorizations on every charge, and I got a voice authorizations. So I'm like, well, where's my money at? And they're like, well, hold on a minute. Because there was probably 30 or 40 charges from that weekend that were all, they were all voice authorizations. So they moved me up, bumped me up, I think 2, maybe 3 tiers of people. I had to keep explaining how I was doing these trade shows. And of course they're like, well, what kind of trade show? I'm like, a gun show. And they're like, oh, okay. And that's how they would bump me up. And finally, when I got to the last person of management, I don't know who it was, and they're like, oh, well, I'm sorry, but we can't support your business as a merchant.
Because you were a gun show.
Yes, because they said we can't, support a merchant that does, they called it flea markets. And I said, wow, it's not really a flea market. And I said, and I have a brick and mortar store because your rep came to the show and solicited me, and he actually came out to my gun shop to close the deal. And now you're telling me that you're not going to process for me. So go figure.
I kind of feeling that probably if you were actually in a flea market, probably wouldn't have had. If you were in the flea market business, it probably wouldn't have
Oh, yeah, if
been a
I was
problem.
selling antiques, like furniture or something, yeah, you're probably right about that. But yeah, because it was gun related, all of a sudden it was a problem.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, and other promoters have told me. I tried to get a couple of promoters here to talk about their part, and I'll just have to relay what they told me. Basically, insurance-wise, there's a promoter in Indiana right now. Did I talk about this already? That is going to have to raise their table price next year because of $100,000 a year for an insurance policy, liability insurance on their show. So he's going to have to raise the price of the tables, and he's going to have to raise the price of the admission probably. So it's going to cost more. It's going to force out more vendors. If the gun shows aren't doing that great the way they used to be done years ago, and the higher those costs are, less customers are going to come and less vendors are going to come. It's going to eventually maybe shut down shows that way. Little promoters like that one, who only have a few shows a year, they can't afford that kind of level of insurance. And also gun show promoters have been telling me about the advertisers, advertising. They are advertisers. They want to advertise their show. So they go to these various outlets, TV, radio, cable, and so on, and they're getting rejected a lot. They have money in hand. They're ready to pay their fees for the rates for the advertising, but they're just flat out rejected. And again, there goes, it's a private company. They can contract with whoever they want, so they have that freedom to do that, I suppose. There's another show in Kentucky, and I don't know if I should say the name, but we'll just say it's Kentucky, but a really famous show, that was going to have to charge the vendors, have to make the vendors have their own insurance, which would have cut out a whole lot of little guys. Anybody that only had a table or two, they would have been on immediately. And that was going to cause a big problem. But they apparently, from what the story I heard, they actually called the bluff of the insurance company that was threatening this. And so they had raised their rates a little bit, but not as much as they wanted to get out of people. Because it was so outrageous, they were going to have the vendors have their own policies, and then only have a smaller limited policy for their own venue. So there's a lot of these companies that are doing things that, in the long run, regardless what government does, and some of it's due to government relation, it's going to possibly shut down some shows. Now, you were telling me a story also about paperwork you had to file multiple times because a government was requesting a bank to do something. Is that right? Can you tell that story?
yeah, and that was actually late 2018 and earlier this year, 2019. So it wasn't that long ago. That was very recent memory. And it's the same corporation that I've had actually for my store, which was originally filed back in 1994 on this particular corporation. And it's my primary corporation I use for my gun-related businesses. So they all of a sudden wanted, they had this questionnaire about ownership and stuff, a lot of questions, about the money and so forth, and how they need to be able to supply this information about the individuals who own a certain corporation to the government, probably particularly the Internal Revenue Service, I would imagine.
Was this a government document, or was it from the bank?
No, it was bank.
Okay, but they already knew this about you anyway. The bank knows what kind of business.
Yeah, I mean, I would think, I've been with this bank for, 25 years, that, all the local people at the bank branch and the president of the branch there, they all know me very well, because I conduct my business there. So it's like, yeah, I'm not a terrorist or laundering money. And
these were the questions on the form, right?
I kind of more or less alluded that way. I mean, I'm trying to remember the language. They were careful how it was language. But it was almost making it sound like it was to prevent terrorism. And I was like, wait a minute, what are you trying to say? Because I'm in a gun-related business that I'm into terrorism or something? I almost felt that way kind of inside after reading the questionnaire. Well, yeah, and after I filled it out the first time and mailed it in like November of 2018, And, the bank is calling me the January of 2019 saying, hey, we need this form. And I'm like, well, I filled it out and mailed it in. And I'm very good about making copies of everything, like stuff like that. So I had it filed with my bank documents that I had filled out this paperwork. And I said, well, I've got copies. I'll send them to you again. And I did. And then I had a local branch from my bank. This was actually another president, not the guy I used to know from the local bank, the president of the local branch, but he was another president too, but I think he was kind of new to that branch. And he calls me up and telling me how urgent it is that I contact him immediately. And it's a voicemail. And I'm like, oh, wow, what's going on? Something's going on with my accounts or something. So I called him back, like within 10, 15 minutes. And he goes, we need you to come in and fill out this paperwork.
The same one you already filled out.
So, yeah, I go in there, and it's the same form. And I'm like, I said, I've filled this out and turned it in twice already. And he's like, well, he goes, I don't think they got it. I said, but, we really need to do it again. And it's like, okay, I said, if that, I was trying to talk him out of it, but I figured this is the third time. I told him, I said, this is the third time I've done this in like 3-4 months. Anyway.
They wanted you on camera maybe filling it out instead, right?
I don't know. It seemed kind of ridiculous. Now, the thing is, I have other corporations with the same bank, but they're not. I have rental properties.
And you didn't have to fill out
And
a form for those.
they've never sent me that kind of a notice on my other corporation that I have that I bank with them. So I'm beginning to wonder if it was specifically singling out the fact of, as I call it, my business, shooting sports supplies. Because I sell a wide variety of different firearms-related products, as well as, like military, anything related, like what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like you're doing a widespread, even prepper type items for preppers and so forth. So I don't know why they want to single out people like us, but that's what it seems like is going on.
I think everybody probably knows it's political climate. That's really what's going on. Been changing over the decades.
Yeah, it has, and it's funny how they, we always were like warned and were worried about this. I remember even back in the late 80s at gun shows and early 90s about that type of thing, with regulation and government and everything, trying to regulate our business more and more as it's been evolving that direction.
Have you heard anything, and I don't need to single out anyone, let's say the NRA, Gun Owners America, Jews for the Preservation of Firearms, are you involved with any, did they give any support for people like you?
Honestly, yeah, and I'm actually a donor and member of all those organizations you just listed. And matter of fact, NRA being, I guess you could call the king. They're the biggest, they're the richest, which is great, believe me. And when times were really, really good, like during the Clinton years, and we were doing really, really well, like when the crime bill went through and there was a lot of money coming in. And I got to tell you, we donated some very, very large numbers monetarily to the NRA.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking, close to 6 figures over a period of years. Okay. And, we thought it was a good investment. And then when later, early 2000s, I actually had an issue at one time and actually went to the NRA convention where they actually meet for legal assistance, because they do have money set aside for legal assistance for, whether it's people or gun shops or whatever that may have problems and they need legal help financially. But yeah, they weren't really, I sat in on the meetings. I saw them donate money to companies that I thought were, I couldn't believe they were like land disputes, like a range had a land dispute with a neighbor, and they were actually giving this range, this was down in Texas, giving this range money to fight legally this encroachment, I think it was, from what I can recall. And I'm thinking, you've got that, and here I'm trying to save a mom and pop gun shop. And when it came my time to go up there with my lawyer, and yeah, they weren't interested in giving me any money.
So you didn't receive the help you were hoping for?
No, and after all the money I gave them, I mean, I'm Golden Eagles life member, on and on, you know, I mean, as I said, we contributed a lot of money to the NRA, but I hate to say it, not so much anymore.
Well, that's a shame, because
Yeah.
the people you donate to.
I believe the NRA is really the best way to go. I mean, they're our strongest lobbying group, but I kind of felt, you know, that I was definitely let down.
I can imagine so.
Yeah. And especially, like I said, being a mom and pop gun shop, we're just, you know, it was with my parents and myself, you know, the three of us, and, you know, we had employees too, but, you know, there's not too many mom and pop shops left around like that anymore. You know, all the big box stores, even the you know, sporting goods, you know, Dick's Sporting Goods, Gander Mountains, the Cabela's, you know, all those big guys have been taking over, I guess you could say, and you don't see that many of the small shops like you used to.
And all that's basically the regular America is paying for that. I mean, basically you have to raise your prices to take care of these. If you have to hire lawyers and all the things you have to go through to do business,
yeah.
all the new regulations, it's costing the customer in the end. That's who ended up paying.
Yeah, even just taxes. I mean, I can't believe the difference between what I was paying in the 90 to run a business and what I've been paying like the past 10, 15 years to run the same type of business. It just seems like my percentages of insurance and, you know, taxes for the business and everything else, everything's just gone up. Yes, and the profits haven't really gone up. You're right, you gotta pass that along to the consumer.
Yeah, and at the end of this video, I'm going to try to probably, if I can find the proper links, I'll post the links to companies that are prejudicial against gun or gun related. If you want to boycott those companies, that's up to you. But we'll post a link if I can find it on the internet. I think there are websites that actually say this, that actually give you by name of various companies.
Yeah, one of the other companies was that dealers were using for a while at the gun shows, even especially through mail order, was PayPal. And at one time, you used to be able to use PayPal to buy gun-related items, but they've actually changed their policy as well. And you know, back in the late 90s, eBay actually used to allow even gun sales at one point in time. But, you know, of course, they since regulated that, I believe, around the year 2000. But they're even very picky on eBay, just even about selling small parts, like a rear sight for a rifle, or you know, if it's a military type gun and you just need a front sight post even, and they pick up those certain keywords in your ads, and then they want to suspend your account. Or I shouldn't say they want to, they just do it. And of course, like with eBay, there's nobody you can talk to.
Yeah.
You get notification from them by email, and
You're talking to a robot.
yeah. So yeah, the discrimination against the gun industry is definitely there at many levels. You know, advertising levels. That's why certain sites have evolved, like, you know, you've got Guns America and
Is that a
Gun
website?
Broker. Those are websites that sell firearms, and
Gun
that's
Broker
what they
and Web
specialize in.
Okay.
Yeah,
We can find the links. I'll put the links in the description box.
yeah, they're probably the two big ones for guns and gun-related products, and that's all they do.
What I find at the gun shows, especially because I do a lot of different types of shows, gun shows, the consumer, the people who attend the gun shows, they seem to be a little more aware of what's going on, and most of them will bring cash to gun shows. Most of them, the idea part of it is maybe some kind of paper trail being shown that they were at a gun show and they bought something at a gun show, especially if you use a credit card. There's definitely a paper trail. So out of all the shows I do, gun shows, people bring cash more than any other type of show, because I get a lot more of requests for credit cards at most any other type of show. But gun shows, people generally want to come in with cash, and for a good reason.
And another thing that has been discussed is the fact on how some purchases with credit cards have been blocked, particularly if they know the merchant who's accepting the credit card, depending on who that person, the consumer, the cardholder, depending on his bank, may have an anti-gun policy. And what happens is they try to make a purchase from a vendor at a show, and
the card doesn't work.
Yes, because when you're swiping it, they know the merchant, they know what kind of business it is,
and they know your location. So if they find out it's a gun show, because of the location services they have, because when you have a swipe thing, you have to log in. It knows where you're at,
and usually it just simply comes up as declined. Right. And the person has the money, they have the money in the account, or they have the credit limit. That's usually not the issue. If they went down to the corner and decided to fill their car up with gas at the Marathon or the Sunoco gas station, the credit card goes right through.
Yeah.
So, but yes, there's definitely discrimination seen there as far as credit card use. But yeah, it's been increasing, I would say, over the years. There's no question about it. Seems like the more anti-gun organizations they must be getting a hold of these credit card processing companies and telling them that they don't want them processing cards for gun shops or gun dealers and so on, because that's the only thing I can figure how they're actually doing it, why they're making these policy changes.
Can you imagine what it's going to be like? And we all can see this is not like a big secret anymore, that when we go to a cashless society, can you imagine what these shows will be like? It might even stop these shows completely.
That's what they've been doing. It's been moving that direction, and I kind of wonder myself, it's hard to believe. I mean, when they were talking about a cashless society
20 years ago, I talked about it, nobody believed, you're full of crap. But now everybody sees, it's here. It's
They're
already
pushing
here.
hard. And I've actually read articles, the banks want to get rid of checks, paper checks.
Yep.
So nobody's, going to write checks anymore. And I'm thinking, well, heck, I got a corporation. I still use my checkbook quite often, I mean, I get orders that come in from my suppliers. I get net 30 days, and I send them a check in the mail, U.S. mail. I mean, it's not that outdated.
Yeah.
It's still a way to do business, but they are pushing pretty hard to go to the cashless way.
Yeah,
There's no question about it.
It's just about here. It's just a matter of time till something happens, until we're cashless all of a sudden. Now, that's my opinion of it. Who knows?
Digital dough, as they call it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to believe you take your debit card just to go buy a 99-cent hamburger at McDonald's.
Well, yeah, even laundromats now, coin machines, fill up air in your tire. You can swipe. I mean, this gets to the point where virtually at parking meters, virtually everywhere you go now, you'll see that it's cash has been eliminated.
And that's the problem too, I think, with the debit card like that. Well, I'll call them debit cards because in most cases that's what they are, because people are getting direct deposits. But yeah, they can track your whole lifestyle. They know exactly where you're going, what you're doing, your patterns.
And this has been going on now for a good 40 years, maybe 50. MasterCard, Bank Americard. Remember that? The two cards that started this nonsense that we're in right now.
Yeah, and they know everything about you. Just like they say, you surf the internet, and they know your patterns. They know the kind of person you are. It's like I said, with the internet and social media, the FBI, if they're investigating somebody, they don't even have to leave their office. All they got to do is jump on the internet and start doing research on people.
Yep.
That could be anybody. Doesn't even have to be anybody specific.
Well, I think I've covered most of the points that I wanted to. I'm sorry I couldn't get a lot of other people here. People just didn't want to participate, I guess. It was more beer time after the show, I think, for a lot of vendors. That's kind of the complaint I heard from most people. So thank you, Vic, for being here. We'll have links below for Vic's business. If you want to call him up, or if you're in the Michigan area, whatever. Do you mail order?
Yes, I do a lot of internet
Okay.
sales. Yeah, my internet company that I have my website, it's esellersusa.com.
And we'll include that in the description box below.
And that's, I got shopping carts. Yeah, and incidentally, that's another problem. I mean, you try to set up a website with shopping carts and you're selling gun-related products.
Same resistance?
Well, it's even worse because it's harder to get set up on the internet with shopping carts because they're definitely a lot more strict because of fraud issues. So they really scrutinize, and there's a lot of...
Well, guns more than other businesses, though, do you think?
Yeah, well, no, just most businesses in general.
Okay.
Now, I've been lucky that I've been with it's Merchant Services in Michigan here. I've been with them since like 1995, processing my credit cards. And they know exactly what my business is, and they've been really good to me. They give me a good rate, and they don't discriminate because of the business I'm in. But I have switched a couple times, and by banks that told me they could save me money. Good thing I never canceled my merchant service that I'm currently with, so I had like 2 merchant accounts, and I tried out the new one, and boom, they canceled me. That happened to me twice since the company I'm with now, since like 1995. So that's when I learned I'm just sticking with them. They're good to me.
Well, we'll link them below then too, because that's kudos to them. If and others may be able to benefit from a company that actually is doing legitimate business with legitimate businesses.
Yeah, and they, like I said, they've been good to me. They're very personable, and they've helped me out quite a bit in the past, especially with getting the website built. Like I said, I know a lot of people have that problem when they're trying to build a website that will have shopping carts and it's gun-related items. Most banks, processors, they're like, no, we can't do that. I've heard that from a lot of different dealers over the years. They can't, they get a website up, with pictures of items and prices, but it's like you got a call to order because you can't set it up with shopping carts. The bank's got to approve that. So.
Okay, well, I think I'll wrap it up now. Thanks for joining us, Vic, and the information will be below in the description box. I do thank everybody for watching. So long.
Yep. Thank you.